That several residents across Johannesburg are bemoaning a lack of supply. We understand there's actually an inspection at a number of reservoirs taking place this morning. Currently speaking now is the mayor of Johannesburg, Dada Morero. Let's listen in.
Water tanks to intervene in the meantime, and we hope in 7 days from now we'll see all residents now receiving water back, because by then all our reservoirs that has been affected will be at the right level of supply.
So you do admit that you're failing in resolving this water crisis in the city?
Yeah, your question suggests that you are failing, when in fact there are interventions that have been put in place. There was a electrical fault which now is being fixed at Mfuleni. We are also fixing at Ekenhof so that the pumps can now continue to pump. But we're also saying to you and the communities that last year already we had commissioned City Power to do an alternative supply should this one fail, so that into the future we are not experiencing this. And remember, it's not the first time you experience power outages. And those power outages resulted in the pumps being affected, and whilst the pumps are affected, they're unable to then pump water into the reservoirs. So that's what we have done, and we are now correcting the power failure. But over and above is an investment we have made into City Power, and by July an alternative would have been there so that into the future we don't experience this.
A couple of those, of course, is issues of the aging infrastructure. There's a backlog there.
Definitely.
What are you doing to resolve this issue? Because it's one thing to fix and have investment plans and all of these planning ahead of the future, but with the aging infrastructure, this is also a crisis as well.
Well, it's not a new issue, and the city has admitted that of course we've got bigger challenges on the infrastructure, and part of what we are doing is looking at different financial models that will help us to implement and deal with the infrastructure. We've been having engagements with National Treasury, with Gauteng, and there are solutions that we're putting in place to raise the necessary capital. The backlog is sitting at about 27 billion, so it requires us to really raise real money in the market so that we can intervene into dealing with issues of leaks. The best thing that we can do on our own is dealing directly with illegal connections, the leaks where possible. And you must also know that we are also investing in building of reservoirs, and one will be launched in April in Brixton, which we think it will start to alleviate the pressure in that area of Auckland Park and the areas surrounding it. So there are interventions. It would not be correct to say we are not intervening. We are. But we also take responsibility that in fact this power failure has caused so much problem in Johannesburg, when in fact had we had completed our alternative source of supply, would not have been where we are. And we apologize profusely, and we feel the same pain as our residents are feeling, and that is why we are 24 hours, the teams are working 24 hours in all the reservoirs, in the pump stations, to ensure that at least in the next 7 days everyone has water being supplied. If we are lucky to get it before 7 days, that is our wish, that is the work that we have put in place. But we must say to the residents, this was unexpected, because it was not something planned as maintenance or something like in December where we had the planned maintenance. It's a power disruption.
Mayor, there's a risk of cholera outbreak, as some of the residents here are relying on a burst pipe to actually get water, and some of them are actually drinking that water. They are saying that there's a lack of tankers around this area, so they end up being desperate, resorting to the water that's coming from a burst pipe. When can they actually get like uninterrupted supply of tankers in the meantime where the water is disrupted by the power supply?
We will increase on our tankers. We're sitting at about 53 tankers throughout to supply the affected areas. Yes, you are right, it's not sufficient. Even the tankers are not sufficient because they still have to also go back to fill up, it takes longer for them to also come back and provide water. So it means we have to increase from the 53 and find an increase so that we can provide water. But we should call on our residents not to use water that will be unhygiene, because it will then contribute to the diseases, whether cholera and so on. So we'll try and intervene to ensure that our people have clean water.
Mayor, Rand Water has warned of a possible system collapse due to the overuse of water by customers. Take us into confidence as the mayor. Is the system on the brink of collapse?
Not the system is on the brink of collapse, but the provision of water is under threat because of the high levels of consumption and demand. In December and January, we were able to reduce the Johannesburg demand to just around 1,000 million liters a day. But now we saw an increase in the second week of the first week of February. We saw that increasing back into the 1,700 million liters a day, which is a problem, and it's a consumption issue that we continue to call on our residents to find ways of using the water sparingly, to continue to call on those that are bypassing meters to also stop bypassing meters, calling on those that are illegally connecting into the system to stop illegal connecting into the system. In that way, we'll be able to manage our consumption. Joburg, we are way above the apportionment that we have been given by Rand Water, and yes, indeed, it threatens the ability of Rand Water to provide sufficient water to Johannesburg.
Is this also affecting businesses in the metro? Many businesses are
definitely
without, the economy. In the metro. We also saw the temporary closure of the Gauteng division of the High Court in Johannesburg due to the water crisis as well. It's affecting operations in the city.
Yes, I think by yesterday at around 3:30, the Johannesburg High Court started receiving supply of water. But indeed, once there's no water, a lot of public institutions, business institutions will be affected, which then brings about a future debate about how we're going to use water in Johannesburg and how we're going to plan for the reduction of the consumption on water, which we are now looking at installing boreholes in our informal settlements as part of an intervention that the Joburg Water and the city is looking at to reduce also on the grid. We're also looking at public institutions, how we are going to bring boreholes, because the schools also get affected when there's no water. Children must go home and therefore affecting their lessons. So we are going to invest as part of a partnership with the provincial government on how we bring boreholes into schools, into hospitals, into clinics. And we're also saying in some areas, how do we support business people to be able to find other alternatives? In that way, we'll reduce from the grid and businesses will have the necessary water.
When will these boreholes happen? When will the installation?
No, we have started. We gave Joburg Water research which they conducted last year. They've concluded that in this financial year, we'll be starting with informal settlements like Pumla Mkashi and the others to start installing boreholes. So in this the next financial year, which begins 1st of July 2025.
All right, thank you very much.
Absolutely. As you can hear, that's Johannesburg Executive Mayor Dada Morero actually giving an update regarding the challenges of water in these areas here in the Joburg CBD. He's actually saying that some of the officials are actually working 24 hours to ensure that the residents who are affected by water outages will actually get a respite in the next future. He's actually actually saying that, you know, a lot has been done to ensure that this problem is addressed in the future. Among some of the interventions is that of ensuring that institutions like schools and other public institutions actually have reservoirs to make sure that they reduce the pressure on the water grid. And with that, it's back to studio.
All right, Ofentse Setimo was live to us there from Johannesburg. Ofentse, for now, thanks very much indeed. We know Joburg Water has a planned media briefing at around 10 o'clock. Hopefully there'll be a whole lot more details around what is being done to expedite solutions to what seems to be a really mounting crisis, for lack of a better term, with many people in Johannesburg spending days without water. I think it's also important highlighting part of what the mayor has said there, that in fact there is now the provision of water is under threat, even though the system itself is not at risk of collapse. Very important indeed. And again, more on that in the next hour.